Back in 2002, that Supreme Court ruling put the determination of what exactly is mental retardation in the hands of the states. And here in Georgia, Shep, the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt, and the state insists that Warren Lee Hill and his attorneys have not proven that yet.
Now that the Georgia Supreme Court has denied this stay, what happens next?
It goes to Washington, to the Supreme Court, as you mentioned at the top, Shep, and his attorney, Brian Cameron, just filed a couple of very pointed new briefs with the Supreme Court, saying that basically the Georgia Supreme Court did not want to hear the new evidence presented in this case. Also important to note, Shep, that there were two dissents among the 7-judge panel that considered this at the Georgia Supreme Court, one of those being the Chief Justice. So we'll see if, as the Supreme Court weighs this very important issue, whether that sentiment prevails or if they will rule as the Georgia Supreme Court did. And this execution will go ahead, scheduled for 7 o'clock tonight. But as we've seen, those executions very often delayed while the Supreme Court considers this matter. Shep?
John Roberts live for us at the prison. John, thank you. Let's bring in some lawyers. Our legal panel today, criminal defense attorneys Meg Strickler and Brian Claypool with us. Meg, let's start with you. The 3 experts that the court used all said he's good to go. All 3 of them have now come back and said, no, he has mental deficiencies, and we were wrong. So what should happen?
What should happen is that the United States Supreme Court should stay consistent with what the global legal community says, that we do not execute somebody who has intellectual disability. 9 experts are now universal in their thought process that he is intellectually disabled, which means he should not be a candidate for the death penalty and not be executed. They need to stay the execution and let the Supreme Court hear this argument out.
Brian?
Shepard, this is a classic case of shoot the messenger. The legal system worked. He went to trial. You had 3 forensic psychiatrists testify. He doesn't meet the criteria for being mentally retarded. Now, at the last second, these experts come back and say, gee whiz, now we made a mistake. That would compromise the entire integrity of our judicial system. The problem you have here is it's a bad standard that the state of Georgia has, requiring beyond a reasonable doubt.
Now, that's the truth. That's the strictest standard in the United States. That said, it is the standard. But Brian,
that's exactly right. And and Shepard,
Brian,
yeah,
IQ of 70
equals mentally disabled.
It doesn't, but that's not the issue. It's does the law in Georgia right now conflict with the U.S. Supreme Court decision? It does not, because the Supreme Court left it to the states to define what is mentally retarded. So the Georgia law
is... he's right about that. The Supreme Court left it to
the
states.
But Georgia has the Georgia is unique in its standard. It's the only state in the nation with such a high standard, beyond a reasonable doubt. Most other states are preponderance of evidence. So there are 2 issues here, and both of which are kind of moot in the fact that he has an IQ of 70. The global community, international law, says you're not supposed to execute juveniles, the insane, or people with mental disabilities.
Well, there are very few places on planet Earth where they still execute people under systems like this, and ours happens to be one of them. That said, that's the law of the land. But you know, Brian, she's right when she says that at 70, you are mentally deficient by standards in the United States and all over the world.
But here's the problem, Shepard. Back when these 3 forensic psychiatrists testified at trial, they had all the information available then that they have available now. So they had every opportunity to go into court and say, hey, this gentleman has an IQ of 70. He definitely meets the definition of mentally retarded. They didn't do that because of a reason. Probably they didn't think he was mentally retarded. We can't act out of sympathy now to try to usurp what our laws are. If people want to change it, they need to write a letter to their state legislators in Georgia.
Tick-tock. Megan and Meg, I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm out of time. Meg and Brian, thank you both tonight. The execution is scheduled to happen right about as Fox Report starts. We'll let you know what happens as we approach that time. The Supreme Court will do something. We just don't know what yet.